Code of Federal Regulations 54.313. The questions before the commission are, does the commission have sufficient documentation through the filed FCC Form 481 to be assured that the high-cost funds received by each ETC have been and will be used for their intended purpose pursuant to 47 Code of Federal Regulations section 54.314. The second issue is, should the commission certify LTD Broadband for CAFII, for the CAFII funding program? Third issue is, should the commission order all high-cost funding program ETCs to submit performance measure testing results with all future 481 filings? The fourth and final issue is, should the commission continue to require quarterly filings of tribal engagement from the ETCs consistent with the requirements in the commission's October 21, 2021 and November 8, 2022 orders? Finally, the commission has provided each of the parties with a period of 2 minutes for introductory comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fournier. So as Mr. Fournier said, we will have brief comments from the parties. So who would like to begin? The department?
Sure, have to. Good morning, Chair Stephen, Commissioners. Richard Dornfeld. I'm here today on behalf of the Minnesota Department of Commerce. I'm joined today by Diane Dietz, Lisa Gonzalez, Kyle Strayton, and Ariel Tiamo, who worked on this docket for the department. Appreciate the opportunity to give some brief comments here. I'd like to use the time to briefly address the department's recommendation related to LTD Broadband. As you know, the department recommended that the commission refrain from recertifying LTD Broadband this year. And in making this recommendation, the department's objective was to preserve the status quo. The department understands that the USAC computer system where PUC staff effectuate recertification is an either-or proposition. You're clicking a box, and so either companies are recertified in their entirety or they're not certified at all. And the department is concerned that the recertification of LTD could interfere with other proceedings both at the state and FCC level. While we're confident that attempts to misrepresent the relevance of recertification would fail in the other Minnesota proceeding, our bigger concern is how LTD may represent recertification to the FCC in the context of its RDOF appeal. In its RDOF appeal, LTD has suggested in part that the commission should grant its RDOF support because state commissions have reviewed its fitness through the ETC process. And we're concerned, given those comments, that the FCC may misinterpret recertification as an endorsement of LTD's fitness to receive RDOF support before the other Minnesota proceeding is completed. We also understand that recertification is not required this year for LTD because it did not receive high-cost support last year. And so given that recertification is not required and the potential interference with these other proceedings, the department recommends that the commission refrain from doing so this year. That said, if there's a way to make clear to the FCC and USAC that the commission is only recertifying LTD for the purposes of CAF2 support, we support doing so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And good morning, Mr. Christensen. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Good morning, Chair Stephen, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Brent Christensen. I'm the President and CEO of the Minnesota Telecom Alliance. In the interest of being brief this morning, I would just like to say that we happily support the department's recommendations on decision options 1, 3, and 5, and I want to focus my comments on the last 2 decision options. On the performance measure testing, I would propose a compromise between decision options 6 and 7. I would propose that we do a affidavit as part of our 481 filings to certify that we are in compliance with performance testing. And the reason for that is all the different programs that have performance testing have various different timelines, and they don't all line up, and they certainly don't line up with our 481 filing. And again, the FCC has certified those, they monitor those, we upload those to their system. So I think that's an extra work for the department to get that work and to take that performance measure testing results and then reevaluate something that the FCC's already evaluated. I think we can accomplish the same thing that the department wants to do if we can do a affidavit that says we're in compliance with our performance testing. And we think that would be a acceptable compromise. On the final decision options between 8 and 9, we support decision option 9. I don't think quarterly tribal reporting has been effective or really solves the purpose. I think keeping it annual with the 481 filing is appropriate. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, then next, LTD.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Corey Howard, CEO of LTD Broadband, for the record. Briefly, certification for LTD's ETC is required, not only regarding 2022, which, as the department indicated, we did not receive any funds, but also for 2024, where we do expect to receive CAF funds, and there's no way to bifurcate that baby. If we intend to, as we expect to receive CAF funds, we must be certified. There's no allegations that we're not meeting performance standards or our milestones. In fact, we're ahead and continue to be ahead of our build-out obligations in Minnesota. And I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, who would like to begin with questions? Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Chair Stephen. Question I have is, I think in Mr. Howard, when I heard the department, Mr. Dornfeld's department, what I think they're concerned about is that if you are granted ETC status again, that your attorneys will make a claim to the federal government that, look, everything's okay here. They've recertified us. I thought that the department's point there that they, to include language or do something that indicates that this is only for the purposes of the ETC designation that's not relevant to other matters. I thought that seemed reasonable. Can you speak to that? And I'd also like to hear Mr. Dornfeld a little bit more about what he was thinking.
Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Sullivan. We don't have any objection to that. I think it's clear, at least to us, that the certification is specifically for CAF2. If the department feels that they need to reiterate a point that I think is well understood, that we don't have an objection to that. I will say that it appears that the FCC's plan with regard to our AFR is to do nothing. There are no time constraints for them to address it. It's been over a year with no action on our AFR, and it's our understanding that the FCC is going to take the position that they effectively never need to act on it. And so we don't expect any action on AFR. There's been no communications from the FCC at all in that regard. So, in the department being concerned about this, I think is probably a little premature. There's been no indication to us at all that they're going to do anything.
Mr. Dornfeld, thank you. Mr. Dornfeld?
Chair Stephen, Commissioner Sullivan. Commissioner Sullivan, I think you've gotten to the concern that the department has. The department doesn't have any concerns with LTD being recertified for purposes of CAF2. Our concern is with the misrepresentation of what that status means. I understand that there may be a way within the USAC system to submit a letter or a cover letter with the commission's recertification of the ETCs in Minnesota. If that's the case, and there's a way to articulate in that letter that for the purposes, for LTD, that recertification is limited to CAF2 and only CAF2, I think that would get to our concern. But given that this is a process, I think that PUC staff, the commission staff undertake, I'm not as familiar with sort of the mechanics of how recertification works.
Mr. Dornfeld, could that be articulated in our order, and would that be sufficient for the department?
Chair Stephen, yes.
Okay. So what is your proposed language then for decision option 4? Or 5, I mean, some version of it.
I apologize, I'm trying to draft in my head on the fly here. If I could get maybe 2 minutes and then I could propose something, that would be helpful.
Sure. And Commissioner Sullivan, did you have another question? Mr. Christensen, I appreciate you looking for compromise in decision option 6 or 7, but it's a little tough for us to change that on the fly. Why didn't you submit comments in the record on that and like let us think that over ahead of time? And given that you didn't, I'll just off the top of my head say like that might be something you do next year then, or ask for next year.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's completely on me. I should have done that.
Okay. It sounded reasonable, but without knowing the full implications of that, I'm a little hesitant to do that. I also think Commissioner Tuma might have something to say about that, but I don't know. Other questions for the parties? That I'm just filling time here waiting for Mr. Dornfeld. I think that Mr. Christensen, with regard to tribal engagement, I'm also reluctant to discontinue quarterly filing until we would get feedback from the tribes that they don't find it useful. And just as an aside, like in some of our tribal consultations, tribal nations have brought up how they appreciate more engagement on this issue. So again, like I'm reluctant to discontinue quarterly filing and move it to yearly until we get more feedback from the tribes that they're supportive of that too. So maybe for next year, if that's something you still want to pursue, my advice, and you certainly don't have to do it, is to reach out to some of the tribes and see if they would be supportive of it, and that would be I think a stronger case to make to moving away from quarterly filings.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Dornfeld?
Thank you, Chair Stephen. I would propose a second sentence to decision option 4 along the lines of state in the accompanying cover letter that LTD's fitness as an ETC for the purpose of RDOF remains under review.
Can you repeat that one more time for us?
Sure. State in the accompanying cover letter that LTD's fitness as an ETC for the purpose of RDOF support remains under review.
And when you say state, do you mean like the commission acknowledges that in, I guess I'm not totally sure what that means. What cover letter that goes to the FTC?
Commissioner, or excuse me, Chair Stephen, I understand that when the commission recertifies ETCs in the USAC system, there's the option to submit a cover letter. And so in that cover letter, we'd recommend that there be some language clarifying that LTD's status as or fitness to be an ETC for purposes of RDOF support remains subject to a state review proceeding.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan.
We maybe have like a couple minutes to talk with
Staff, sure. The commission stands in recess until 10:35 a.m.